The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Discretion is advised.
All right, we're going a little crazy this week, gentlemen. I've been wanting to do this show for a while, and this is going to be our dedicated current state of the UFO phenomenon episode. I'm very excited about it. Joined by a very, very old friend of ours, Mr. Frank the Engineer.
Thank you.
He doesn't look that old.
No. He is. He has a special. He's one of those. He drinks the baby blood.
Benjamin Button syndrome
That,
going on. Yeah.
Well, that and also the adrenochrome.
Yeah,
Big adrenochrome guy.
You gotta let me get some.
Yeah, it's really good shit.
Get some of that shit.
Frank is actually 74 years old, which is amazing. And we're also joined by another very, very close friend, been on the show a few times, Mr. Johnny Dunn.
It's not real applause. I watched him hit a button.
Theater of the mind, man. Don't ruin it.
All right.
We're trying to keep it going here.
Not old though.
Thank you. Not old. No. You're getting there, but you're looking good.
Thanks.
You joined me recently. Oh, your hair's not blonde anymore.
It's there. It's just
You went bright blonde for a while.
I think it just it's a gray masker.
Check this shit out, dude.
That looks good.
Oh, nice.
I went nutter butter.
Nice. I like that. Let me see it again.
Okay. Boom.
That's good.
Dig it.
Ba, ba, ba.
Yeah, mine just grew out. I think. I don't know. It's still there.
Well, should we? Let's not talk UFOs. Let's talk hair.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, let's scrap. I got all these
Hair
notes.
routines,
Let's
yeah.
scrap them. So I invited you guys.
We're just gonna talk about the strike.
Are either of you guys in SAG? No, but thank you guys for coming. Things are really exploding in the UFO. I'm not going to call it UAPs. Let's call it UFOs.
I
you know?
agree.
Whatever makes you comfortable.
Yeah, it all makes me comfortable. But things are getting very, very active in the world here. Frank has been into it for a very long time, as
Yeah.
I have, and Johnny is kind of like a new budding interest.
Yeah.
But
I've always been adjacent, but I've only recently started like watching everything that you send me or comes across my
your plate.
Yeah, well, there's if you open up Google or Bing or whatever, like your news feed is going to be based on what you watch.
Oh,
So it's like all that stuff now.
which is part of the problem with why we're so dumb in the country, because we're just fed what we want to see with no opposing opinions or whatever. I quickly, I know a lot of people have basic understanding of like where UFOs have started, like how we started hearing about it in the country and the world. But I want to do a quick kind of like up-to-date sort of thing. Would you agree that the big interest, Frank, kind of started with Roswell?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah. I think that would be the biggest one. I think prior to that was probably a few years ago during World War II with the Foo Fighters. Mm-hmm. But I do think that crash in Roswell was the catalyst for modern UFO lore.
And in a way, it was kind of the first time that the military ever acknowledged it and then took it back immediately. But
Yeah,
the
like a day
headline
later,
was
yeah.
United States Air Force, claims to have found a flying saucer.
Correct.
And then like, whoa, hold on a minute. But kind of one of the biggest stories in American history as far as the UFOs. And like, that's when this whole cover-up idea started.
Yeah.
Riveting.
And it's worth mentioning that Jesse Marcel, who was the main guy that recovered the wreckage, to the day he died, he never changed his story. He said, what we found there was stuff that I can't say it was ours. So, yeah.
And he came forward like 30 years in the 70s, right?
Yeah, I
That
think
was the first
Stanton
time.
Friedman was the guy that interviewed. One of those kind of old school UFO guys, yeah.
And another a big case was the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Do you know that story?
I know it briefly, but yeah, you can...
March of 1967, it was a nuclear facility, and there was a captain with the U.S. Air Force. His name was Robert Salas, and he was on duty and got a report from the guards. He was down below in like where the missiles and all the.
Is that the mountain range that's like a full bunker of nuclear, anti-nuclear?
It might be because
Yeah.
it was like missile defense.
Yeah.
Like,
NORAD.
Sort of like that. It's
BORAD.
Good. It's Borad. Let's just call it Borad going forward. And he was on duty. 67 gets a call from his guards up top side on the ground, saying that there's these lights that are kind of flying over the nuclear facility, and this captain watched as whatever it was up there shut off all of their missiles and shut off the nuclear weapons. And
Flex.
what's that?
Flex.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time, which some would consider an act of war. And that's very well chronicled. And like, I think over the course of that 6 days, like 30 missiles were just shut down out of nowhere, and pretty wild shit. Right. And that was, it feels like there's been a lot of sightings post World War II around nuclear facilities. So something to that. And then things have been, I feel like since the 80s and 90s, it's been mostly conspiracy theory talk when it comes to this shit.
I think it got well. That could also be part of the narrative, is the CIA sort of tried to push these guys towards fringe in order to jumble up the credibility in the narrative. But it also was very entertaining. So
sure,
there's a reason why Coast to Coast is a wildly popular show, because it's fun to listen to these kooks talk about stuff.
Because your sensible mind tells you this is ridiculous, but then the little kid in you is like, but what if?
And also the perfectly observable person with observant person with two eyes looking at infinity. It's also that is hard to unwrestle with like possibility. So reason and logic and the CIA telling you that you're nuts, but also looking out on a perfectly clear night is also very like intimidating to dismiss.
It's overwhelming sometimes when you think about the vastness of the universe.
It's scary.
You can't you can't even overstate it.
No.
Because the minute you try to like summarize it, you're like, okay, well now times 100 billion. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
And I think I said this on a more recent episode, but the closest star to Earth is 4.2 light years away, and the speed of light is 670,600,000 miles per hour. That's the speed of light. So imagine going almost 671 million miles an hour for over 4 years, and that's the nearest star to Earth.
Other than the sun, right? Yeah.
What? No.
The sun is seven light minutes away, right?
Is that what it is?
I think so.
That's too close.
I think,
especially when it starts. It's
I
shooting
believe
solar
it right now.
Yeah,
it's
hot as fuck here.
I believe it.
Essentially, if the sun were to burn out, we wouldn't know for a good 8 minutes.
Where we are now, I feel like the sun is currently located just over Santa Monica with how hot it's been here recently.
You can reach out and touch it.
Oh, absolutely.
People in Arizona are like, fuck
it. It's a dry heat, my ass. So it's mostly been like just campfire stories and unsolved mysteries and coast to coast, 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Well, I also want to just to add to the timeline. In the 60s, I want to say late 60s, early 70s. That's when we started to see the rise of the contactees. Up until that point, it was just sightings in the sky.
Are you referring to abductees or just people that were contacted through telepathy, or what do you mean?
Well, I think at one point they were called contactees because the term abductee was kind of considered a little, too intrusive.
Well, being abducted is pretty fucking intrusive.
I agree.
But yeah.
So I believe there were, abductees, contactees point is, it was that. Also fair to, for full transparency, that was also the decades where, a lot of drugs were being consumed.
Sure.
Did it have something to do with it? I don't know. Some people believe that the drugs, and I think he mentioned it, that the drugs were kind of put in the scene to kind of make, to discredit any kind of wild stories. Because, here you have somebody, retelling this crazy tale, and they're like, oh, I just finished taking a rip right before it. And it's like, okay, that kind of, all right.
But then now is a good time for me to plug my UFO t-shirt line, contacttees.com.
Dude,
just hit me up.
Really not the worst idea. They only cost 19 flartons, 3 easy installments. Some would argue too that there are certain kind of drugs and certain meditative states that can get you in a place to experience these things more quickly or easily. I haven't experimented with any of that, but have you done any of that kind of stuff, Frank?
I have, and well, I can see how that can happen. Are
you referring to DMT or something else?
One of the one of the first books I read as far as like dealing with like alternate realities was this book called A Separate Reality by Carlos Castaneda, who was he was a UCLA student. He was studying what's it like the study of humans. What's it called?
Biology or sociology? Yeah.
It was like sociology.
Dudology.
What was it? Anthropology.
Anthropology.
Thank you.
There you go.
So he went and
the clothing store?
yeah, there you go.
Cool.
It was around back then.
All
but
right.
yeah, so he he according to his book, he went and lived with this native man, like a witch doctor, in the desert of Mexico for a number of months. And they did the peyote ritual. And at one point, he talks about, seeing certain entities and stuff like that. Description fit what we would now call a gray alien. So,
And when was this? When
the book came out in the 70s. I want to say like 72, 73.
And when was the first description of the Greys? Was Roswell? Did they kind of describe them like that back then?
They did describe them similarly. I don't think the eyes were described as big. But they did describe having, abnormally large eyes.
The oval head.
I think
and
from what I remember, the Roswell description were all like they kept saying children.
yeah,
they
look like
were
children.
child size.
But I think, from what we have come to learn is the big eyes grays is the Strieber guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the cover of Communion.
Yeah, very creepy. I remember looking at it as a kid at the grocery store, and it was always there. I feel like it was at the grocery store for my whole life.
Probably the same copy.
Yeah,
But it's
always
wild.
creepy.
I mean, the effect that the cover of that book had on us, because it came out in the 80s when we were kids. And I just heard him on a podcast recently. He was on Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp's podcast, Weaponized, and he was talking about the cover of that image and how he had that painted. He hired someone to paint that, and he has the original in his house, which I would love to see. You've interviewed Whitley before.
Yeah, I asked him about that, and apparently it got painted on a piece of wood. Like it's not canvas; it's like a piece of wood. Yeah.
But he said they kept doing it until he got the eyes right. He said the eyes were the most important part. This like kind of dead, almost like a shark, like a great white shark eyes when they roll back. But it's wild. So things were kind of picking up steam in the 70s, 80s, 90s as far as chatter, and it very fringe topic where if you talked about it a lot, you were sort of seen as a little bit crazy. It was never taken seriously by newspapers or news programs.
Right.
And then I feel like in 2017, the New York Times had their article about the Tic Tac encounters with Commander Fravor and Dietrich and them. What was your take?
Dietrich and them.
Dietrich and them. And those
Dietrich,
guys. A little bit of that, a little bit of this.
Big Fravor.
Do you remember reading that? What was your take on that?
I think when my initial reaction was a bit cynical, just because if you spend any amount of time looking up these kind of stories on the internet, there's a lot of BS, and I thought that was one more. But obviously, at first, I was like, I read it, but
because apparently it took place off the coast of San Diego in 2004, off the Nimitz, which is the warship.
And mind you, that wasn't the first time that there was like video from like a government entity. There was a video a few years before that from Homeland Security, where one of the planes that kind of watches over the Atlantic between Puerto Rico and Florida, they saw a very similar object flying above the water and then submerge into the water and come out. But they did it. That for some reason didn't, pick up the same amount of steam.
But they released that?
Yeah, that was released. But
Was there a name for that video?
I'm curious.
I think you can look it up. Yeah, it should be pretty easy to find.
I could have
But
sworn that the
video, because nobody in the case of Fravor, he said, I saw this thing. That other video, there was nothing to back it up. I said, like, here's, somehow this video got
Fravor
out.
said that he engaged it. Like it came from above 80,000 feet. So it could have come from, much higher.
Yeah.
And went from 80,000 to sea level in 1 second.
Yeah.
Which is just
It's insane.
seems like it's pretty fast is what I'm getting at.
And these jets are covering pretty large distances.
Yeah.
In half a minute.
Yeah.
So if they have from the way I understand it, that the jets all kind of meet up. It's like when you go to the mall, and you lose your phone or something, or like you're like meet at the Ferris wheel.
It's called the cap point.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
rendezvous point or something. Or cap point. So they all go back, and apparently the ship knew where their cap spot was or something.
Yes.
So,
they were engaging it, and the Tic Tac, whatever, disappeared. And they asked like the home base, like, where is it? And they said, you're not going to believe this. It's at the cap point, which was 60 miles away.
Yeah.
And it went there in 1 second and was there waiting for them. And it's a secret location.
Yeah.
Like the cap point, like only the jets and like the radio control guys know it. It's a very secret spot. And this thing anticipated where it's going to be, which is like really chilling when you think about it.
Yeah, the implications are, there's a lot of people that talk about, some type of like psychic communication or whatever. I mean, who knows? These things could be reading your thoughts, your thinking, or somehow they can, like nowadays there's like people who walk around with scanners and they can like swipe your credit card info just by, can they do something similar where they can just pick out this information, if it's,
and anticipate your moves, which is like when it comes to, like if it was like a wartime situation, you would stand no chance. It's like a full on Matrix move where like you just kind of anticipate the bullet and just like kind of bat things away. It's crazy shit. So there's 3 videos released by the Pentagon at that time, which was a pretty major acknowledgement, I feel like. Pretty big push into the mainstream for UFOs.
Yeah, I think that definitely kind of is definitely a marker in the history of UFOs, and for a country like the U.S. that has been so secretive, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Canada, all of these countries, the governments have said, hey, we've seen, even Mexico has released videos going like, we don't know what this is, like
they don't usually see nothing, it's just like
so
I don't see nothing.
So yeah, for the U.S. to finally take that step was pretty big. Yeah.
And then I feel like since 2017, things have been going pretty full bore as far as like every couple of years, something big happens with some kind of new acknowledgement. And then, I've been talking about it a lot recently, but I've been fanatical about UFOs since I was like 7 or 8 years old. So 35 years, I've just loved the subject. A lot of kids were into dinosaurs and shit. I was into aliens. And I've been waiting for this moment to come for most of my life. And I've been following, UFO Twitter for a long time. And on June 4th, things started to kind of like really start kind of heating up. And let me put something first. So in 2021, John Kirby, who was at that time the Pentagon press secretary, was asked about UAPs. And I want to play you guys this clip. And just watch his reaction in 2021.
John, happy birthday. There's no way that I can sugarcoat this. I was talking to a gentleman about the UAP report, and he contends the Pentagon has alien bodies and crafts. So I just wanted to run this past you. Does DOD have these things, and if so, where?
Jeff, the UAP task force is really designed to take a look at these unexplained aerial phenomena, try to help us get a better understanding of them. Again, I'm not going to get ahead of the report that the DNI will submit, that we are helping, obviously, and providing input to, and I think I'll just leave it at that.
So, quick impression.
Can you guys just kill me right now?
Please, no more of those questions. I feel ill. Yeah. So he was the Pentagon press secretary at that point, and then this is just 2 years later, and now he is the National Security Council as he's coordinator for strategic communications. This is recently, much different guy.
Thank you, John. I want to ask you about something that's starting to gain steam here in Washington, which is UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yes,
there is going to be a House Oversight Committee hearing at the end of this month. Senator Schumer has put forth an amendment to the NDAA that is modeled after the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act. What level of transparency does the Biden administration believe that the American public deserves and should have as it relates to UAPs?
Well, without speaking to proposed legislation, I won't do that. As you know, the Pentagon has stood up an entire organization to help collate and coordinate the reporting and analysis of sightings of UAP across the military. Before that, there wasn't really a coordinated, integrated effort to do that. And of course, we will always want to be as transparent with members of Congress and with the American people as we can, considering national security concerns.
This used to get laughed at for quite some time, for years and
What
decades.
gets laughed at?
The idea of Congress taking this up. I mean, Gerald Ford talked about this as a congressman back in 1966, and here we are, what is that, 60 years later, give or take. Is this a legitimate issue? Does the administration believe that getting to the bottom of these sightings in the air, is it a real concern? Is it a real legitimate issue as you see it?
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have stood up an organization at the Pentagon to analyze and try to collect and coordinate the way these sightings are reported if we didn't take it seriously. Of course we do. I mean, some of these phenomena we know have already had an impact on our training ranges. For when pilots are out trying to do training in the air and they see these things, they're not sure what they are, and it can have an impact on their ability to perfect their skills. So it already had an impact here, and we just want to better understand it. Now, we're not saying what they are or what they're not. We're saying that there's something our pilots are seeing. We're saying it has had an effect on some of our training operations, and so we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to understand it better. So, yes.
Do you believe these whistleblowers that have come forward?
I'm not going to talk about individual whistleblowers.
So, totally different guy.
Yeah.
That's just 2 years later, and a member of our government saying that these things are interfering with training exercises. You would have never, when we were kids, we would have never thought we'd ever see this day.
Are they slow pilling us?
What do you mean?
They're just giving us they're basically
The slow drip?
confirmation at a snail's pace, so that in 2 years we're all just like, yeah, it's real and everybody's okay with it, as opposed to mass hysteria saying like.
That's a big part of what I want to talk about today, for sure. And that's kind of like, it feels like a huge ramp up has happened. And I was saying that, June 4th, I'm watching Twitter closely with UFO shit for a long time, but June 4th, through the day, things started to kind of build and people were kind of like hinting at something big coming. And it was like, it felt more dramatic than usual. I mean, UFO Twitter can be very dramatic and ridiculous, but it felt like something big was about to happen with like clocks ticking down and hourglasses and shit. Mm-hmm. And then at like 4:45 in the morning, I was still awake and people were like, it's about to happen. The shit's going down, whatever it was. At 5 o'clock on the dot is when the David Grusch article was dropped by the debrief. Mm-hmm. Do you guys know what the David Grusch article was? What was your take on that? And explain kind of what it was.
I mean, my take is pretty layman's. It's a high operating, decorated military backgrounded government official who is in charge of. I don't know if he was in charge of data collection or if maybe he was in charge of investigation of data that's been collected, but essentially became a whistleblower saying there are programs in the government that are covert secret programs that Congress has no knowledge of, that he has knowledge of, and he's essentially ringing the bell, blowing the whistle. Sorry, saying that we have possession of technology and crafts or possibly materials that are of extraterrestrial origin. I think that's the word.
He said
exotic origin.
He made it very clear not to say extraterrestrial.
Okay.
He said non-human intelligence.
Okay.
Yep.
That's even creepier.
Well, he explains why, sort of. So, yeah.
What conclusion did you come to at the end of your time on the UAP task force?
The UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No. I thought it was totally nuts, and I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse. People started confiding in me. They approached me. I have plenty of current and former senior intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me. They were a part of a program. They named the program. I've never heard of it. And they told me, based on their oral testimony, and they provided me documents and other proof, that there was, in fact, a program that the UAP task force was not read into.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to for decades.
Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
So he was a very high-ranking intelligence officer.
Yeah.
Former veteran.
Trusted.
Very trusted guy who it's been made very clear that he was, had some of the country's deepest secrets that he was allowed to be aware of. So a very credible man.
And did he? I'm asking this question. Did he do this because he was made aware that he'd be protected and not be like?
Yep.
I believe that, it was because of Biden signing that, like the whistleblower act. I mean, I don't know if that's a name, but yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, does Biden think that little girls have whistles on their neck? He's always
Everyone knows they do. The best little girls have whistles on their neck.
He's a big fan of whistleblowers.
Yeah. That's where you get the adrenochrome. It comes out of the whistle.
I texted you the video that I do believe Frank was referring to that was called the Go Fast video.
Oh, I thought that came out the same time.
Maybe
okay.
I think that's the one that was on Roosevelt, and then the other one, the gimbal video, is another one, and then
the gimbal one's weird because the gimbal video is the one where the craft turns sideways,
which is Bob Lazarian.
It is precisely how Bob Lazar said these things moved.
Yeah,
how they turn their bellies towards where they want to go, and
fuck it all up.
Gravity amplifiers. It pulls. So basically, it makes
hit the juice.
It makes it so it falls where it wants to go. So it
creates a gravity distortion field.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
AKA, they call it hits the juice in the technology.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah.
Hits the juice.
No,
nice.
I just made that up, but
fuck.
There should
I was
be
about to call the episode "Hits the Juice."
Maybe you still can.
So,
it's a little button.
We'll let everyone know it's called "Hitting the Juice" if you didn't know. But yeah, so those three videos. So David Grusch comes forward, and there are new whistleblower protections, which means you can, if there's some shady shit going on more than usual, you can come and testify behind closed doors to Congress. And basically, it's weird. Like, it's given people the legal right to break NDAs, which is, I mean, it's awesome for us, but it's insane that they would ever do that.
I think there's probably some shady NDAs. That like you signed something.
I've signed them before.
Sure.
I've worked for bands. I had to sign them before.
And it's essentially like, I mean, if your NDA is set up to protect people from reporting terrible crimes against humanity, perhaps they're set up in a
maybe there's something weird about that. Right. So it sounds like David Grusch, he wasn't necessarily coming forward because of the alien part. I think he's like he pegs himself as a major patriot, and he said that what made him upset is that these black programs operating without any kind of oversight, which is, I mean, massively illegal. I mean, we all know that there's special access programs, black programs where the military and the government are allowed to spend money without necessarily saying what the money's going towards. It's more like saying, like, just believe me, it's for a good reason. And it's being funneled into these possible crash retrieval, reverse engineering programs, which none of this information is new. You know what I mean? Like this has been, Roswell was a crash retrieval, I mean, if you believe the story. So nothing he was saying as far as bodies and crash stuff is new. But what is new is that he went through the proper channels to expose it under oath at penalty of possibly going to prison for the rest of his life. And more people have come forward standing up for him. We don't know these people's names yet, but people who, and he's criticized for not being a guy who actually worked on the programs. He was just hired to basically like, what's going on? I've heard stories about these retrievals and talking to guys.
It all seems like it's secondhand knowledge. Yeah.
But he spoke to people like who had to tell the truth as well legally, who have worked on these craft, worked on the bodies. And some of those people have come forward and spoken to Congress behind closed doors, backing up what Grusch has said, which has led to everything that's happening now with new legislature. And then a week from tomorrow, we're getting our first congressional hearing with some whistleblowers and possible people who worked on craft. And I just can't believe that we're living in these times.
I mean, it's wild. I was just thinking about this yesterday. A story came out that, the country has been in a very polarized state for the last few years. But
no, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
Not at all.
Liar.
They signed an NDA, right?
It's fake. That's fake.
Fake news, dude.
But the one thing that both parties seem to agree on is that this needs to be looked into, this UAP thing.
Yep.
Now, does that mean that Reagan's vision is coming true? Remember Reagan
What
speech?
if we were suddenly posed by an alien threat? How quickly we would put aside our differences.
Right.
That's a pretty good Reagan, right?
I thought it was Reagan right now.
I thought you hit the sound button. Did you not have a Reagan button?
Donald Dagan over here. Yeah.
So when you kind of start looking at this from a bit of like what we have to pull from as historical context, everything this guy said, like you mentioned, for us, that have been looking into this since we were little, like none of it was new. What was new was that somebody with pretty high up government clearance is saying like, hey, this stuff is true.
Yes.
That was new. That for me was the shocking part.
And it has been looked into before with the Condon report, which is looked into Roswell and a bunch of old shit, but it was all kind of like
it was just
they were hired
PR.
And they were hired to poo-poo it. That was the whole point. And then if you think about even Arrow recently, which is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is like a thing put together to take all the reports from pilots and people about UFO sightings, headed by this guy, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who had his kind of first public meeting recently, and he seemed completely full of shit. I felt like. Did you watch it?
No, I haven't.
You didn't watch it? Okay.
No.
Basically, he said that we have found no evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence or whatever. He used that word again, and like David Grusch even came forward for his interview. He said, "I know Sean Kirkpatrick. I've spoken to him about what I've seen. So the fact that he says that he hasn't heard anything is ridiculous." So it sounds like he's sort of towing the government line, but I feel like he's soon to look pretty silly, in my opinion.
One of the things about this report, the Grusch report.
Grusch, excuse me. Grusch. Thank you.
Is that, one of the things that the U.S. has been criticized for over the years is this fragmentalized way of running the country. The fact that the FBI doesn't know what the CIA is doing, what the Pentagon is doing, what the Congress, everyone seems to just be, shouldn't we all be working together to figure this out? Like, I get national security and all, but at one point you got to wonder, well, who's really running the show? Because clearly the president doesn't know everything.
You'd get a lot more done that way, you would think.
You would think. But I think it's done on purpose. I think that there are people who have some interest, whether they're good or bad. I mean, that depends on who's looking at the situation, that, they want to keep this information, well, not yet, but, the pressure is just building up. Everyone has a phone now, people are recording things everywhere. It's like at some point you got to go like, okay, yeah, cat's out of the bag. Yeah, there is something.
Well, one of the reasons that Grusch wanted to highlight some of the stuff that he was seeing that he thought was messed up is something that's probably important to listeners who aren't necessarily interested or tuned into this stuff. You'd think that like, well, the government should be able to tell the government what's going on, and they're by law, bound to this congressional oversight. So like the Congress is checking on the government to make sure they're doing the things they're supposed to be doing with the money that they're allocated, right? Mm-hmm. But special access programs, and this is the way that it works. I'll try to use like an analogy or an example. So the government has a program that's supposed to look at alien technology, right, and analyze it with the best scientists and biomechanic engineers and the top brains of the government. But according to law, they're supposed to divulge this stuff to the Congressional Oversight Committee. So Congress is oversight the workings of the military and these compartments, right? Mm-hmm. But the way around this is they say, you know what we're going to do is we're going to call rare form engineering, and we're going to give them a contract on making a better desk. And this contract is going to be, funded by our kitty full of money. And you guys make better desks, and we're going to tell the government that we're making better desks with one of our programs. But they basically go and they take a meeting with rare form engineering and say, okay, you guys need to look at this material, this craft, and turn in one desk a year, And essentially they are now hands off from having to report these things to Congress because they're just making desks with rare form engineering, right. And engineering is essentially it's almost like they're putting it in a compartment that's far away from oversight, and that's
gets rid of their accountability,
and it works.
The term, there's a term for it I forget what it is, but yeah, basically it's like, well, we don't own it. We're just hiring certain companies to do certain things,
right? And then look at the desk they turned in.
Yeah.
Very technical desk.
What also it leads into, so we're talking about the bipartisan issue, and we're seeing all kinds of legislature in the last month or so that is very, very pointed at kind of what you're saying right now about like finding the loopholes and trying to track these things down. Like Marco Rubio, who is what's his title? He's like the intelligence director or something. He's like intelligent. Whatever. He's a big intelligence guy for the government. And he recently said this on Fox News, which is interesting. I mean, Fox News, I'll give it credit where it's due, but they've been covering this for a while. But here's Marco Rubio.
You're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and you're really involved in foreign affairs. There've been a lot of articles lately about UFOs. I know this question is a little out there. Is there any truth to any of this?
Well, we don't know. All I've said is we have people that have very high clearances, both today and in the past, who did really important work for our government or continue to do important work for the government, who have come forward with some claims about the U.S. having in the past recovered exotic materials and then reverse engineered those materials to make advances in our own defenses and technologies. That's the claim they make. Now, I don't know if those claims are true or not. What I do know is that one of two things is happening here. Either they're telling the truth, and that is something that obviously would be the biggest story in human history, or we have people in really important positions of government who are crazy and who are out there making up stories and who are still in positions of importance. Either one is a big problem. So we've got to figure out which one of these two it is, because the second one in particular would be very troubling. But we don't. All we know is claims that people have made. These are credible people that have done and continue to do important work for the country. And by law, we're required when they come forward as whistleblowers to take their claims seriously and to investigate them. But we just don't know. That's the answer.
He makes a good point. It's one of two things. Mm-hmm. Either it's true or people are lunatics, and both are pretty troubling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what is it like? Let's have a fun departure. What makes you? I mean, do you have any like absolutely batshit sort of like crazy? And I had to say batshit. It's overbeat.
It's okay.
But what are things that make you go like, oh fuck it, this is what I think, and what is your like internal proof that you think is like, okay, this is
internal proof,
not proof, but like I'll just start. Okay, so I feel
Johnny, same question for you.
No, like because we've been talking, we're in the weeds pretty deep, and I don't want it to be like, I want it to be kind of fun, and I feel like if I sit back and I try to think about like the first computer IBM made in 60. I don't know what, but these big rooms that were cranking out essentially the power of a calculator. And now you have computers that are doing we don't even know what they're doing. It's like unfathomable amounts of processing and spitting out shit that's like so crazy and smart and wild that the engineers who are making it are like, yeah, we don't really exactly know what's happening here. So
scary.
It's so scary. And it's like you can look back and like the television still looks kind of the same. It's a square that shows like light and moving images, and like the advances are beautiful. Yeah. But like the advance from the first IBM computer to the power of like quantum computing and silicon, something had to happen that we got our hands on, right? Something big made something like as big as a football field computer infinitesimally small, right? And that doesn't just happen. I feel like that doesn't really just happen with like a smart guy who went to school.
Well, that's been a long-standing thing of like, did they interfere? They being whatever the beings, aliens, whatever it is, the visitors, did they interfere first in human evolution? Yeah. If you look at the missing link, they still don't understand how we made such a jump to become basically Homo sapien. But then you're right, technology jump has been insane. And some of the arguments are that through reverse engineering is where we got fiber optics, where we got, I think, Teflon possibly.
Yeah, it was
the Kardashians.
Yeah, it was night vision.
Which are mainly Teflon, like 80% Teflon.
Yeah. Mostly all on the lips and their butts.
Kevlar is what it was.
Kevlar.
Night vision.
Not Teflon for cooking. Kevlar.
Kevlar, night vision.
I'd like to see a Teflon Kardashian.
Microchips.
That's my new username.
Microchips. And night vision.
Night vision, yeah. And this was all actually by another Army guy, Philip Corso.
Yep.
He published that book the day after Roswell. Depends on who you ask. Some people believe that he was actually put in the scene to muddy the waters.
As a disinformation agent? Or?
I mean, once you start looking at the Roswell thing, I mean, you got to put it in like the context of what was happening at the time. You know, we had just finished World War II.
1947, so 2 years after World War II.
You know, there's there's actually a lot of people that believe that what crashed there could have been a Nazi craft.
I had not really heard that before.
Yeah, because the Nazis, and there's documents that prove this, that the Nazis were already working on Kevlar, night vision, and microchips.
Before we were?
Yeah.
Is that do you know? Is that factual or is that an opinion?
Yeah, it's in the book.
Okay.
There's also another great book called The Brotherhood of the Bell.
The Nazi Bell, of course. Yeah.
And in that book, I mean, that one you got to kind of sit down for like a few days to read, but that one will blow you away.
I thought you said it will blow me. I'm like, oh, I'm interested.
If you hold it just right.
Perfect. Have you read them both?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second book is by Will. What was his name? Farrell is the last name, not Will Ferrell.
Okay. Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
From
Ferrell. But yeah, I highly recommend both books if somebody wants to really kind of, look at that. Like I said, those conspiracies are pretty great. Some people believe that it was a top secret U.S. craft. Other people believe that the aliens were actually Japanese prisoners, because they were using
that, or deformed children. They'd said before, right. Like birth defect children.
Yeah, they can't fly though. Very good.
No, they can't fly, which is why it crashed. I mean, if we're they're up there for about 18 seconds before plummeting. Dumb kids.
You got to put smarter deformed kids out.
You got to.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's once you start kind of like going down these different avenues, but at the end of the day, they all kind of lead back to, well, the government, regardless of which scenario we look at, the government knew that something crashed there.
Right.
And they try to keep it
clear.
Hidden. Yeah.
And it's changed, 3 or 4 times as to what it was. I mean, we don't need to go over, Roswell has been talked about ad nauseum, but it has brought us all to where we are today. But what you're saying about like what the concrete proof is, or whatever,
or like what is it that what makes you think like, oh fuck it, all this definitely is all alien shit that we're like, I mean, anything that
I just think the overwhelming amount of testimony from credible people, whether it's military personnel or airline pilots. I mean, airline pilots mean a lot to me because like their whole job is like they're in the sky all the time. Yeah. They should have a lot of them are ex-military pilots. Like most of those guys know what all the planes are in the sky. And then, it comes to scientists coming forward and like like Bob Lazar didn't seem like a guy who had any interest in aliens, and his stories never changed. Stuff he said back then, which wasn't provable, has now become provable with Element 115 and all kinds of these kind of things. But my whole thought is like, of the millions of encounters people have had or seen or abductees or whatever, all it takes is for one of those to be true, and the whole thing is true. Yeah, just once. But you could say the same thing about God too, but I'll never believe in God, so I don't know.
It's frustrating to have. What are we on 70 years now since this thing sort of really became like not popular?
David Grusch kind of said that since popular, yeah. He said the first recovery was in 1933. But like
was that the Bell thing?
No, it was a crash in Italy that Mussolini recovered.
I was going to say Mussolini
during the war. The Americans basically stole it and took it back, and that might have been the first.
But if you know how many people have been alive since 1945?
Dozens.
Yeah, and if you and I also get equally frustrated at like, how does everyone have the fucking worst camera phone of all time at the most important times of their lives? And these are all obviously we can fractal into every single point here and be like, well, the technology blurs your phone, or like
no good pictures of the moon.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Everyone who takes a picture of the moon with their phone looks like absolute shit.
I got some good ones though.
Yeah, but you don't, with your phone?
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People don't usually walk around with a full camera kit. Or when you're seeing something, it may just be like you may just become so mesmerized that you don't even think about it.
Which we do hear a lot of accounts of people that, it's like, I saw this thing and I just couldn't take my eyes off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even Betty and Barney Hill, they just remember seeing the light, then cut to
3 hours
they're back
later.
on the road.
Of course.
Who knows what happens?
And then also, like, you also could argue that, like, there has been some tremendous photography and videos taken. So it's tough to say.
Yeah, I get easily as frustrated as I do delighted at the hope and the hopelessness of this. It's both
at the same
intoxicating.
Time. Yeah.
So like I can get just as frustrated at like the amount of how could there's 10 billion people on the earth right now. I don't know, give or take a couple billion.
8 billion.
And going backwards, if you add all the people up back to the 40s, you're dealing with like hundreds of billions of people maybe who have come and gone, and we're still scrapping over tails, and that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
You're right.
100 billion people, and we're still just sort of like, my friend's friend said he saw this thing in Barney Hill, and like, I mean, I love the stories. I do.
Of course.
And I'll listen to them.
But publicly, none of us know for sure yet.
Yeah.
We have our beliefs, but as far as like knowing,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
What
do you feel like you know for sure, Frank?
I've always been of the belief that, there's no way we're the end all be all of creation.
I totally agree.
I think we're past that. Yeah.
So for me,
and we want to bring in Mick West. Mick West, come on
in, Mick. Come debunk this whole thing. What an asshole,
fucking guy.
So so for me, I've always been open to the possibility that there's more out there, and once you start looking at some of like the historical records. Some of the
religious
legends.
Art. I mean, religious art.
That's a whole topic
you've seen these craft and chariots of fire in the sky.
It's like Mary with a UFO flying overhead and things like that. Yeah.
Some of them look like the things that people say they see over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
1800s, cowboy times, they were talking about seeing shit. And I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good.
Through history, it's been everywhere.
Yeah. So, I think the moment when my dad was a big fan, or is a big fan of Eric von Daniken.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was like old enough to read Chariots of the Gods.
Have you met him?
Yeah.
Was your dad psyched to hear that?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I showed him the picture and everything. But yeah, once I read, Chariots of the Gods, I was like, man, like, there's got to be something to this. Like, this is not just a bunch of random, things that just happen to fit together. This is a puzzle. This is meant to.
I think I gave you my copy of Chariots of the Gods.
I don't think you did.
Okay.
The documentary is also good.
That was someone else, Johnny. Thank you very much.
I was going to ask for it back right here.
I don't have it.
All right, start looking through some drawers.
Do it. Look around. Feel free to look around. What else did I want to get to real quick? Oh, yeah. So I want to get into a little bit of the legislature that's coming out and just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into some fun kind of questions. So Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate Majority Leader, just added this wild amendment to the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act. And it's called which I can't believe I'm seeing it in person, like in writing, but the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Disclosure Act of 2023. There's the word.
Yeah.
Disclosure, the thing we've all been waiting for.
So I think that if you were to do the Google word trends over the last, disclosure's peaking.
Yeah.
And I think that's on purpose to normalize the concept. And we all start saying disclosure, like just like we're saying AI.
Right.
We're saying like, data.
I can't open Twitter and not see disclosure in one of the trending words.
But that's because our trends are starting to become personalized, just like my homepage.
I know, you're right.
But I get like my Twitter trends are all this stuff. Explore,
hot Brazilian dudes.
That's it.
Whatever.
Bob Lazar's number 1. UAP is number 2. iPhone
go.
number 3. Griezmann is soccer number 4. GTA 6.
Oh fuck yeah!
All right. Ken Starr. Don't know. I guess that's.
Oh,
Ken Starr from the Lewinsky.
I think that's
right. Yeah, that's the only Ken Starr.
Right? Is that what I'm talking of? Okay.
Yeah.
He was a lawyer.
Yeah,
that's right. Politics
Star
trending.
Report.
But if you go to real
Star
trending,
Report,
if you go to real trending, it's WWE.
Okay,
the real stuff. The Braves.
And that's another thing. Like people,
Shaq.
for the most part, people are not really paying attention to the story either. So anyway, in this Disclosure Act of 2023, this quote is saying he said, let me see this here. Schumer said, the American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, NHI, and unexplainable phenomenon. He said that. That's the leader of the Senate saying that on record, which is wild to think about. The bill is completely bipartisan. The lawmakers say, quote, the sheer number and variety of stories about UFOs have led some of us and our colleagues to believe the executive branch may be concealing information about possible visits from extraplanetary civilizations.
Wow.
It's wild.
That is wild.
And does that have something to do with the hearing this week?
Yes.
Okay. What day is that?
July 26th, which is Wednesday.
Okay,
a
so
week from
next
tomorrow.
week.
Yeah. By the time people see this, the hearing was yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For the most part. So we'll have to do a
How
follow-up.
crazy was that hearing?
Oh, wow. Can you believe when that one guy said that thing?
When the alien came out?
The alien?
Yeah.
He was wearing a Yankees hat
That's
like
never
an
not,
asshole.
That's never not funny, right?
Never. The other weird thing in the and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, in the legislature, which is expected to pass, it gives the federal government eminent domain over any recovered technologies of unknown origin or biological evidence of NHI, non-human intelligence, now held by private individuals or organizations, which is, we're talking about alien bodies and spaceships. They have to know something more than just wondering to word it like that. They have to know something more than they're letting on. But the fact that it gives the government, so if Johnny is Lockheed Martin, and Frank is the federal government, if Johnny was gifted a UFO by the government 40, 50 years ago that you've been spending billions on
researching, breaking it apart,
doing the whole thing, and maybe churning out some kind of ships for the U.S. or whatever it is, now Frank, Mr. Government, can come knock on your door, ask to search your place, find it, and now be like, this is mine now. That's kind of fucked up in a weird way.
So that's why they're giving them 30 days to disclose it and 90 days to
hide it.
To turn it over.
It's like it's gone.
So
without any penalty of like recourse of like, you guys shouldn't have done this, and no penalty.
And that's
of
part
like,
of the intelligence. What's that called? The fucking Intelligence Authorization Act, which it gives and
they don't have to. They're not going to get in trouble, and they also don't necessarily have to say who gave it to them. I think
it made it so broad as far as incorporated mandate. Any person currently or formerly under contract with the federal government that, quote, has in their possession material or information provided by or derived from the government relating to UAP that formerly or currently is protected by any form of special access or restricted access, to notify Dr. Kirkpatrick of ERA, whatever. But basically being like, if you have anything or ever have, if you work now or ever have before, if you know anything, whatever, legally you have to just tell us and avoid getting in legal trouble.
Now, can they say we don't know the answer to this, but I've been so busy.
The kids have summer camp. The kids are out of school.
Working on my yard.
I didn't check my mail.
This hovercraft that's a cube inside of a sphere. Been watering my hedges.
Doing your homework. Yeah.
Like there's like, I wonder if they can actually say, I was gonna get to that, but I didn't read it.
So basically,
jury duty.
It would go into effect.
I didn't see that.
It would go into effect January 1st.
Ate it.
Yeah.
So they have 4 or 5 months from now, and then it's like within, what is it, Frank? Within 60 days of the new law, they have to provide 2 error and 2 oversight. This is everything we know about what we have. This is a list of all the material, whether it's bodies or craft. Within 2 months, they have to provide a list. Within 6 months, the oversight committee is allowed to go in and inspect the fucking craft and bodies. But are they trying to move it around? Are they trying to hide it now? Or like, what do we think? What do you think is going on?
I don't know. I mean, here's another part of me struggling with this.
Yeah.
Like, I do a lot of listening to these things while I'm like trying to get leaves out of my big fat above ground pool that is covered in leaves. And I actually, it's very therapeutic, but I listen to these things. I clean and I quarrel with, tell me, I want to know. Are we being selfish? Because these people clearly are hiding this. Is that because we're going to all die within 5 minutes of all knowing it? Or is this going to be like a fast track to the end of the world? And that would suck too, because I still would like to watch baseball for a few more decades. And
talk about FOMO, dude. Like, if we're all gone, the stuff we could miss in the future,
I mean, I've listened to a lot lately, and wasn't there someone who was like, I just wish I could go back to where I didn't know about this stuff. And like,
I can relate to that.
Yeah. Like, I just like imagine knowing and having the burden of existential angst and confusion and sort of like your spirituality being upended for a lot of people. A lot of the beliefs and the hopes that you had are all dashed because, now it's out in the open that we're essentially a science project or something. But like, you could just go, like, I just want to go back to cleaning my pool and listening to like, what's the rental radio rental?
Oh, radio rental.
Yeah. I just want to like, kind of like just be, I still want to have that like
oblivious.
Dumb oblivion.
Yeah. Go back to being
that's a
like,
thing.
what are the kids are, what the fuck is the word? They always say kids are so
oblivious.
No, just not innocent,
carefree.
But what? I don't know, just all that. Yeah, just kind of going back to like not caring.
Yeah, and that is
the ontological shock of what we might be getting ready for.
Sounds like a couple of folks that want to take the blue pill.
There you go. There you go. Precisely.
Like, we're meddling. Yeah. We're meddling, and all of a sudden we're like, "Fuck, dude, we meddled too much. This sucks." And it's like, maybe there's. I mean, I'm not no sympathy for cops, but like the government may be trying to like prolong our chill existence.
Well, I mean, let's get goofy a little bit. Let's go into the kind of the fun stuff. UFO Twitter, people very interested, have all kinds of opinions, ranging from, to crazy to plausible. But one of the more dire ones is that the world governments, our government, has been given a timeline by the beings, whatever they are, of like, you have, maybe let's say it was 2017, you have 10 years to prepare your people, and then we're coming.
Okay.
Like, we're going to be here. And differing opinions is that there'll be open contact, which would be whatever these beings are, just living with us, amongst us, like Alien Nation or some shit.
Why?
Because Earth rules. I mean, I don't know.
But like wherever they're from clearly has like advances. So maybe they pillaged that Earth.
What if they're from here?
Just
what if they live here now? I mean, this is something I've been waiting to ask Frank about too. Is like my current thought, based on what I've heard and what I've read, is that these things are interdimensional. They're not. I don't know that they're from a different planet. I feel like they're from an alternate reality of Earth, another dimension who's like around us.
Leave us alone, dude.
And it seems like that's what a lot of the more people in the know are tending to believe. What are your thoughts, Frank?
I'm definitely inclined to, like these being some type of interdimensional beings, or there being that type of.
That's your thought too.
Yeah, because I mean, without getting too carried away, even looking, it's like looking at death. It's like is it really dying, or are you just merely transcending to another type of reality, another frequency, right? Yep. So that's basically another dimension. So it's not really death. Do
you think these things could be what we consider ghosts?
I think that some of the phenomena could be attributed to it. There's been plenty of reports, especially like in the 50s and 60s, of people just hearing like knocks and things like that, weird creatures around their farm or whatever. So there's definitely something that to that. To something that Johnny was saying earlier was, as far as like beliefs and stuff like that, I just want to say that I do think that is a major reason why this is kind of being held back a little bit, because for me, it's like, okay, cool. Like I already had a pretty good idea that there were other beings, other entities, right? But what can they tell us about ourselves? And what, of all that, how are we going to receive it? What if they said, oh, Jesus never existed? Or evolution is bullshit. We made you guys.
Yeah.
Like, you get what I'm saying?
That's another recurring thing too.
That for me is like, where do we go from here?
We are a planned species,
right?
That we're like a petri dish of.
We're getting too smart for them, though.
Maybe
we made our chips.
I mean, it would be hard to argue that we're smart, considering how we treat the planet and how we treat each other.
True, but we did, and we have. You ever seen a dolphin with a camera on his head?
Yeah,
that's fucking powerful shit.
It is.
Power dolphin.
Put lasers in those fucking things. You got a new weapon.
Have you tasted hot mustard Doritos?
I never will.
They're so good, and we made them. Wow. We made them this year.
But think about the fucking Doritos these things have, dude. Fucking Moondust.
Right. Let's go.
Moondust sprinkled Doritos.
Now I'm back.
Nah. Yeah. No, I'm in.
See, I can waver 4 times before the podcast. They got better Doritos over there.
Fucking all kinds of gifts waiting for us. What kind of monster energy do they have out there? I gotta know. Talk about hitting the juice.
Yeah, hit the juice.
So what are the other? There's the other ideas that they might be future humans, which is like a very people are really digging deep into that possibility. Mm-hmm. But if that were the case, why would they come back and not interfere to make things better for us? The environment's fucked. You think they would know, like, hey, in 20 years, you guys aren't gonna be able to live here unless
maybe they realize that like our spiritual sort of instincts, which is just like, let's tell stories to each other about where we're from and how God works. And maybe that's the only opiate that really keeps us calm. And if they were to come back and disrupt that, then the world evolves into chaos. And they're like, we just wanted to make you guys stop burning coal. But it's like, we ended up, I think that the disclosure will be so unsettling to so many old people and so many people in power that it could possibly arrest like any good side of it.
The power thing is a big part of it.
Yeah,
you know, because like it's been said, like Lou Elizondo, who has been one of the first guys who worked with these programs, who came forward and gave us a lot of information, and he's made the point before that it's going to be hard for people. Like,
he's got rubber bands in his face.
What do you mean? No, Captain Lou Albano. Nice. Joking. Fucking WWF joke. Old school. Cyndi Lauper shit. Yep. Lou Elizondo has said that, on Earth, we are the alpha. We are the apex predator on Earth. We go into the oceans and we can capture sharks and tag them. We can kill bears. Helmets on dolphins. Which is the big theme on this podcast, is putting helmets on dolphins.
Call them power dolphins.
We can go down to the Titanic and we
can't.
We almost got there.
Darn.
Jim Cameron can go. He knows what's up.
When those guys found out that they weren't going to make it back up, they were crushed. Get it?
He can just flip the video.
So yeah, we were able to, like, we have no real enemy better than us or more powerful than us on Earth. So Lou has said that it's going to be hard for us to realize as a society, as a species, that we're more in the middle of the pack when it comes to where we stand in the universe. And that is going to be hard for people to take. It's also going to be humbling, which I think is kind of a good thing. I think being humbled might be a good thing for us. Your thoughts? Your thoughts?
Well, I think that, yeah, that should be the sentiment of our species as a whole, but I feel that there's a large sector of it that don't want to be humbled. You know, and like you just said, you know, it comes down to power. Can you imagine, you know, if the aliens, you know, pop up tomorrow and they're like, oh, you guys work to make money and make a living? You know, you don't have to do that. You just got to do this and you get all the food you want.
Yeah.
But imagine that world, right? What would happen?
We're such a fucked up animal, though.
Well,
you know,
we definitely exhibit a lot of greed.
That's what I mean.
Evil.
Is that even if we were given like, here's free energy, you know, you guys can power everything in your life on something the size of a pea or something. We're still going to try to find a way to monetize it and keep it from certain people and have, you know, have the elites have the best, you know, free energy Wi-Fi or whatever the fuck it is.
You guys know what that light bulb that's burning up in San Francisco?
No.
There's a light. We can probably pull it up right now. There's a light bulb. Just look for the longest burning light bulb. There's a live cam on it.
Oh my god.
And there's a light bulb that's been on in this. It's in the fire. It's in this fire department. It's been hanging from the ceiling for like 130 years. And it's been on. And the way that the
Centennial light.
Yeah, this light's been on for over like how long has it been?
1901.
Yeah, it's been
Are you fucking shitting me?
And the thing is, these lights were normal, and this business was a business that cranked out these light bulbs, and they were essentially like the quality of this light bulb is going to basically put us out of business. So we need to invent worse light bulbs, shittier light bulbs, because how can we monetize the light bulb if it lasts forever?
So this light bulb's been burning for 122
There's a live cam.
years.
Find the live cam.
I hate to see the electric bill.
Yeah. I wonder if you can go in there. I wonder if we can see that thing. Like, go in there. Anyway, the thought logic here is that
bulb cam.
Yeah, there's bulb cam right there. What is the website called?
Burning bright, baby. Centennialbulb.org.
That's so cool.
Can't believe someone scooped that up before I got
it.
Wow.
So the theory about if you a larger macro of this is Tesla had essentially created a form of you know, I'm a dumb guy, so I'm just going to say power.
Yeah.
That was far less monetizable than the Edison style of energy, or light or whatever. So anyway, that guy broke, destitute, dead, died lonely and penniless. But he probably had something that was probably far better for the social, you know.
And the way it works is companies buy that information and then kill it, which is like the death of the electric car.
Which is maybe what our government's doing with the tech that's found in the field in Roswell.
That's kind of what the
or hoarding it.
That's one of the things that David Grusch said is that, you know, to hoard this technology and information and have it be such a terrible thing to keep from society, where it could be used to better everybody's lives. That's one of the things that made him most upset, to make him want to come forward. But yeah, there's got to be something we can reap from that would help everybody.
Yeah, and I also feel like we kind of got to give an honorable mention to Gary McKinnon, the Scottish hacker who came out saying that, you know, he hacked the U.S. what was it, like the Pentagon computers, and he found evidence of like off-planet bases and like awesome. This extraterrestrial military, so to speak, and apparently. You know, and we heard of this thing called the Black Knight satellite over the years. He claims that he saw an image of some cylindrical object that just hovers over our North Pole.
And the Black Knight was said to be like a piece of like space trash, or
it was
space
like
debris.
An artificial satellite. It was meant. The theory,
but it was
is
written
that it
off
was,
as a piece of space garbage.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there were, you know, I can't remember the mission. It was like STS 80 something. I can't remember.
TurboGrafx 16.
Right.
Hell yeah.
But there were some interesting, they are, if you Google Black Knight satellite, there's some really interesting images of just some weird black metallic object.
Was it outside of the space station, or was it somewhere else?
I can't remember. I think
Something
it
like that.
likely was outside of the space station.
I remember seeing some sort of video that was like a thing floating by, and it was like
the Uma.
Oh no, that's the
space turd.
The space
it's with the sail,
Yeah.
light sail.
Yeah.
It's cool, all cool words.
Wasn't
Great
it like
stuff.
emitting like some signal or something?
That and there's also there's some sort of metal in there. But it was putting out some kind of signal.
It was, right? Yeah.
Oumuamua.
Oumuamua. That's it.
So it's
Interstellar.
But the satellite he's talking about has there's videos of how you can watch on C-SPAN the NASA footage of just this space station. Someone had seen it go by or something. And Oumuamua is like so far away. That's just radio signals.
There's been some really insane shit that has just popped up on NASA feeds that, it's funny because like you'll see something float by one of the live feeds and the camera will cut.
Right.
Ooh.
And it happens seemingly all the time.
Yeah.
And then NASA has been questioned about it. Like, we've never cut a feed. We've never done that. And NASA just had a press conference about UAP and UFOs.
Oh.
And they're like, we know nothing.
Okay.
Don't know.
NASA plays, yeah.
And they claim to be the ones that would like release whatever they found to the people, but they also seem like there was some kind of, I don't know, there's something about keeping it from people.
You see something hit the moon the other day?
No.
Yeah, something hit the moon. I guess it was a meteorite. But you could like cameras in Japan were watching it and they just saw a little just it had to be huge.
Massive, of course.
But
does it have any effect on us? Is it going to reverse gravity or anything? I would rather that not happen.
Change the tides. Moon sucks. Moon fucking sucks.
What are we talking about?
I always thought that thing was turning.
No.
I always thought that thing was turning around. I was pissed off to learn it wasn't turning.
We only see one side of the moon.
I hate that.
Everyone on Earth sees the same part of the moon.
And we get the pretty side though. If you see the back of it, just
that's where all the nasty shit happens.
I know, but have they flown something out there and like let us see anything?
They have, but we've never seen the dark side of the moon. This is another fun conspiracy. Is like the structures.
That's where Pink
on the
Floyd
moon.
recorded their album. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
They're the only humans who have been there, and they recorded one of the greatest records in history.
Makes sense.
Really great stuff. What are your thoughts on the dark side of the moon?
Oh man, that I've been fascinated by the moon for a long time. I think
Johnny hates it.
I got pictures of it. I'll show you. You guys talk. Yeah. You guys talk. I got it.
But I know that David Icke is a very polarizing figure, but you kind of hear this kind of the conspiracy theory bouncing around in different places, which is that the moon is also an artificial satellite. There were those asteroids that hit the moon like a while back, and NASA recorded that the moon rang like a bell, indicating that it was hollow.
Well, you can hear the sounds. You can hear the sounds that the astronauts caught on their microphones of the moon making these like wild noises, like almost like music. Have you heard it?
No, I don't think I've heard it.
The moon music.
I'll have to look it up.
Johnny wants to show you.
Oh, that is nice.
I got the moon cam. I got a little stabilizer or whatever tripod thing and oh yeah, look at this one, guys. Maybe I'll send it to you. You can put it on. This is the moon I took. I'm sorry. This is Jupiter.
Dude,
with all the moons.
Wild.
Look at took that photo.
That is wild.
I took this photo. Look at all the moons.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
That is really.
So you can get this camera on Amazon. I think you can get it for like $400, and it's got a
Jesus, man.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
that's really clear.
There was a moment during COVID when when there was no one on the roads, and I went outside. I was just like losing my mind, and went out and looked up in the sky, and there was, I think it was the moon, Uranus, Jupiter, and Mars were all visible at the same time in the same grouping, and I was like, this is one of the coolest moments ever.
And again, to just kind of go back to the moon briefly, I also have to mention that Buzz Aldrin, on more than one occasion, has said that when they got to the moon, there were others waiting.
Yeah.
He's gone back and forth.
He said they're here, right?
Right.
Or they're with us or something?
What does that mean?
What do you think?
What, I mean, but like, he knew it was on a hot mic. Like, what's he?
Well, he was trying to talk to Houston and just be like, "There's shit here."
Yeah, I believe that the story is that they claim to have seen lights in a crater like some distance away, and it was like the welcome committee or something.
Johnny, do you think that he was like punking the people?
I think the guys who were were cool enough to go to the moon in 1969. Is that right?
Yeah.
Were just like kind of bozo Texans, you know?
Let's say space cowboys.
They were just sort of like, they were not calculated. Let's make sure that we're not saying the wrong thing that can be miscommunicated on a podcast in 2023. Because those guys were like badasses. You know, here's another. I'm going to take a tangent here, but I was wondering why the pilots when I'm on the planes, why do they all talk the same? They all have the same dialect. They have the same accent.
They're never like hey, what's up, man?
Right.
Heading to Houston today. Should be pretty good. I mean,
but they're all the same.
And we're coming up on
because of
there's a psychology to it. I think.
No, there's a pilot, and I'll think of it. Chuck
Woolery.
Yeager.
Oh yeah, of course.
So Chuck Yeager. They all were basically parroting Chuck Yeager. They want to sound like him, calculated like him, short, sort of like meaningful things. And I think Chuck Yeager sort of influenced a generation of, obviously not a generation, a paradigm of communication. And I just don't think, I think Buzz Aldrin's kind of a doofus a little bit. You ever seen him punch
you saw
the
what
guy?
he did to the last guy that said
Yeah,
that, right?
careful. Come on in, Buzz. Tell Johnny give him a little what for.
Give me the bat.
Hey, he died, didn't he? Didn't he die?
Buzz?
I don't know.
Did he die?
No,
I think the other one died.
All right, then come on in, Buzz.
Yeah. Who's the other guy that died?
I met Buzz
He
when I was
almost
a kid.
did. He went and there's a whole conspiracy about his trip to Antarctica recently.
He went recently?
Recently.
He's an old fucking man.
And they had to fly him out because he had a medical emergency.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit off. I do.
You do?
I do. I think Buzz Aldrin's a little bit kooky.
Like
Probably not the only
different
one.
than old man off?
Well, he was on the moon being off. If he was saying, like, why would he say they're here?
Because there's something there.
Come on. But then he gets home and never talks about it.
But not allowed to. I mean, I think that seems pretty simple, like pretty kind of clear cut as far as
What's the other guy's name?
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything?
He has said something before, hasn't he?
He's gone.
His first thing was like, oh, fuck, aliens everywhere, dudes. Look at this one. They're naked.
Kubrick's like, cut.
Right.
Cut. Take two.
Yeah. Back to one. Back to one.
Yeah. Let's get this craft services back over here. Get some tang in these boys.
All right, Buzz, I like the energy. Let's bring it up a little bit. And anyway, I don't know. The moon is interesting. How do you guys feel? Like, I know that, like, it feels like, I mean, for me, it feels like we're on the verge of some major information, a whole new, like, a change in everyone's beliefs and everything. How do you guys feel about the future? And at what point, like, you have a daughter she's 11. Mm-hmm. Have you spoken to her about it? Has she asked?
I just, sometimes I'll say, like, they're thinking there might be aliens, and she'll be like, cool. Or really, like, I don't think she's that curious. Maybe because we talk about it openly and freely, so it doesn't seem like, and also we haven't raised her, like, she's not like hugely God-fearing. So it's not like if we were to say, like, there's
your beliefs are going to be questioned soon.
Totally. Everything's always been very open-minded. So
you're definitely an open family.
Yeah. She's been saying aliens and stuff for a long time. She doesn't really have any, from what I know, not any like hard beliefs about it. But your question, my answer is, I really like this moment. Mm. I love the inquisitive nature of everyone and all of the speculation, and I love the ideas and all of the like hopefulness. And I kind of like, I don't want this to be over, because I don't want it to be like a letdown, or I don't want everyone to be full of fear. I also I just feel like it's fun to talk about. It's kind of like a fun,
absolutely.
It's almost like a pastime.
What about speaking to? I want same thing. If you want your thoughts too, Frank. And have you guys talked to family or other friends about it? Because my friend circle is not super into talking about it. I'm starting to feel like the lunatic in my friend group, because I'm always like, "You guys read the new fucking? Can you believe?" And they're like, "I'm just drinking beer, dude. I don't know."
No, I love it. You can always talk to me about that stuff.
I know, and that's why you're here. And
yeah.
That's why I've been wanting, because Raza, my wife, of course, has been wonderful, and she is showing more interest. But I still feel annoying because it's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Frank, your thoughts on like where are you at emotionally with what's going on? What do you expect? Kind of the same thing.
I think I mentioned it when a couple of weeks ago when you texted me about doing this show, and you were telling me you had like an emotional reaction to the news, and I remember me telling you,
I'm having a weird time.
I was, and I mentioned it's like, you know what, I had something similar, but for me it was just kind of like anger, and the anger because, you know, it's like all the people who said, hey, I saw this, or hey, this happened to me, or whatever, and you know, they were made fun of, they were ridiculed, you know,
totally,
lives were destroyed. And it's like now the government goes like, it turns out that it was real.
You know, we did that to you on purpose.
Yeah, it's like if you ever listen to a Whitley interview, it's like you hear the pain in the man's voice, you know, of everything that happened.
On that weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, Whitley was on, and Whitley was one of the first guys that talked about like being sort of
my trash.
That's right, being like probed and being like
raped.
Yeah, he calls it rape.
And he I heard that podcast. He almost checks himself because he's probably like doesn't like reflecting on that.
Of course,
but also like what a terrible thing to happen.
He makes it very, very clear he was assaulted.
Yeah,
and he talks about like South Park. One of the first South Park episodes is like the anal probe episode, and it's completely making a mockery.
Yeah,
which I understand. Like people think it's a fun story. It could be silly to some people, but for someone like Whitley, it affected his life in a profound way, good and bad. But you're right. Like people like him, people like Bob Lazar, who might turn out being that they were correct. There's some vindication, but it's also like someone like a guy who was sent to prison for a murder he didn't commit. And like he's in there for 30, 40 years. His life has been taken away from him. And then with DNA stuff, like, well, listen, our mistake.
Right.
You're free to go. Enjoy your life. It's like, well, cool. I'm free now, but what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Right.
My soul is crushed.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
My spirit's broken. My my whole life people thought I was nuts.
What do you guys think about that guy, Whitley Strieber story? Fire in the Sky, good movie.
That was not him. That's Travis Walton.
Okay, sorry.
Whitley Strieber was like he had these visitors like that would come to his cabin in upstate New York.
Yeah.
And he could almost count on it. He would have people over to experience these things that would like show up in this cabin. And he had some. How many times have you spoken to him before?
Twice.
Okay. You introduced me to him once.
Yeah.
That was really, really cool. And Frank took me to Contact in the Desert, the UFO, the big UFO thing in the desert a couple of years ago. And I want to go every year with you if I can.
Yeah, for sure.
But so what Whitley's basic story was just
he began to get these visitations. I guess that's the term he uses. You know, he refers to them as visitors, never says aliens. So he had, as you mentioned, some very intrusive procedures, very, just traumatizing. For nobody in the right mind would make up these stories and go on national and stick to them.
I disagree with you there. I think people would. I think what people will do for attention is limitless.
I think that the people that do end up being like the Billy Meyer or the Adam Adamski.
Yep.
Those are the guys that
George Adamski. Yeah.
Those are the guys that do it for attention because they basically start little cults.
I record a UFO every day.
Right.
Look at this alien.
But, a guy like Whitley, I just, I couldn't picture somebody just putting themselves through that, during every interview just for fun. At the time when his book came out, I remember when I interviewed him, he said that nobody was buying his book. Like, it was just, nobody was touching it. And that Art Bell had him on his show almost like to help him promote the book. It's like, hey, come on the show. And that was one of the first times he was able to tell his story and just be comfortable enough to say it. And it resonated with a lot of people because then, the book becomes a bestseller, blah, blah, blah. So,
and
it's at Ralph's.
What? Yeah. Still, it's the same one. Same ones right there. Unfortunately for Whitley, too, is that he's a science fiction writer and a horror writer who had this
when I heard
extraordinary claim.
When I heard that, I was like, oh, okay.
It sucks because
I
it's
was
like,
kind of bummed out. I kind of wish he was like a math teacher or
right,
something. Yeah.
Right.
But at the same time, think about it. But at the same time, and the reason why I'm saying this because I've thought about the same thing. It's like, darn, it's like, yeah, that was like the worst combination if you want to believe a wild story like his. But suppose that these entities, these beings or whatever, knew who he was, what his abilities were. You know, this guy is subservient. This guy's a writer. He notices.
He's a communicator.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah.
What better person to bring along to then retell this experience with that level of detail?
That's interesting.
It could be. I'm not saying that that's the reasoning. I'm not saying that's what happened.
I like the take.
But,
yeah.
you know, I believe that we wouldn't know as much about his experience if it would have been, you know, I don't know, somebody else.
He kind of brought it to the mainstream in a lot of ways.
I mean, a lot of what he said became kind of like standards in like the UFO lore community, right? The way someone's abducted, what happens to them, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it became kind of like the rules of.
Yeah. He set the rules.
Yeah.
Did he talk about like being taken through walls and all that kind of stuff? And
I'm trying to remember. I don't
remember either.
One of the things that I gotta ask him next time if I get the chance to talk to him, but. One of the things that I read is, you know, that they made a movie about communion, right? With Christopher Walken. Right.
It's a weird movie. Like I always wanted to like it more than I do.
I agree. I think that it had
the little blue guy, the fucking fat little blue guy.
Same thing. And actually, Travis, who I've spoken to before, I've told him this. Like I felt like Fire in the Sky could have been so much better. You know, but he said that the studio wanted to make like a horror movie, so they kind of
that one scene. It is terrifying
in the ship when he's coming
but he said it's not what happened.
No, he says
there's some parts that
are,
you know.
So, but anyways, going back to Whitley, one of the things that I got to ask him about is apparently he hated Communion, the movie, right? And one of the funniest things to me is, you know who did the soundtrack?
I do. Eric Clapton.
Yes. Good job.
Movie
but
buff.
It's the from
that
what
racist.
From what I've read,
dirty racist.
But yeah, from what I read, he was he had a lot of nose candy when he was working on that soundtrack. So that's why that. But yeah,
interesting.
It looks like it was just like one of those very 80s, you know, a bit of a Nexus type of movie. But yeah, from what I hear, so I'm always gonna. The chance I had a. You know, the opportunity to talk to Whitley, I want to bring it up, but I'm like, I don't want to upset him if he's like, they made a mockery of me. You know?
I would be curious to know.
But yeah,
I mean, it's a hard story to tell, right? Because it doesn't make sense anyway. So to put it into a narrative, you have to change things. But the nature of the phenomenon is so strange.
Yeah,
a lot of it doesn't make sense. I want to wrap up in a moment, but have you talked to any family or friends, Frank? What is the take from people in your life?
You know, it's funny because my mom. You know, she's not overly religious, but you know, she reads her. You know, she's read her Bible the whole, you know, all of her life. And
is she Catholic or is she? What is she?
No, Protestant.
Okay.
So it's funny because I remember like some years ago, like probably 2011, 2012. She was flying back from visiting my brother in Spain. So. When she came back, and you know, I was already doing like West of the Rockies, and
bring it back. By the way, bring it back.
I'm working on it. Good. Yep. And I remember one time, you know, when she got back, we were just talking, and then she starts telling me that when they were flying over the ocean, she just, you know, happened to look out the window, and she saw this silver disc flying below the plane. Now, listen, my dad is the UFO guy. He's the one that got me into this when I was a kid. I blame him for everything
Thank you, Mr. Argueta.
Yeah. My mom was like the complete opposite. She's like, that don't exist. And if they do, they're like demons, blah, blah, blah. I would get both sides.
Sure.
But so I know my mom, she would not, you know. But she starts telling me, it's like, you know, I saw this, it looked like a disc, and it was like flying a bit lower than the plane off to the side. And, you know, it was like, you know, during the day. But she says that, you know, she started looking around to see if anybody would react or something, right? And when she didn't see anybody reacting, she started wondering, like, am I seeing things? And then she says, the way she explains it was, It's almost like it went through an invisible door. Like it just disappeared. It didn't disappear as a whole.
Interdimensional, dude.
Right? Exactly. So I remember like, wow. And one of my questions was like, oh, so do you believe now that, and she's like, I don't know. And that is something that
really
a lot of people are going to have to wrestle with, is the fact that when this is just confirmed and you see them walking around, a lot of people are going to have to come to terms with their, everything they've known in life. It's going to be redefined, our history, everything.
History books, religions, just.
But I feel like the Vatican may have kind of seen this coming, because preparing for this show, I was just started looking. I wanted to just kind of. I remember the Pope making some type of mention about extraterrestrials.
Basically, the Pope said, "Obviously, we're not alone." Something like that, right?
Well, he made. I think the comment was in
I
relation
hope they have
to
delicious children.
Baptism. He was like, if aliens want to be baptized, I would baptize
them. Oh, that's right.
But before that, in 2009, it looks like the official Vatican astronomer did an interview, and he said that there was nothing wrong with believing in God and believing in aliens, and us having some type of extraterrestrial brothers, right?
I can agree with. I can get down with that.
I think the Vatican may have. I think they know. I mean, going back to that crash from 1933,
that was the Vatican was apparently involved in that retrieval, and it seems pretty.
I think they know. I think that they probably have stuff already in the works, so that they can maintain their structure. Let's call it that.
They're a business too. I mean, there's a lot to lose. There's a lot of business to be lost. Whether
a lot
it's
of gold,
oil companies. The church is a business. They make hundreds of millions, billions of dollars a year from their believers.
Vatican has more money than like.
Oh yeah, the art they have, the gold, everything. It's wild. I guess I'm curious to see what happens. I've been waiting for this literally my whole life. I've been so excited, and I find myself getting more scared lately. It's making me nervous. Like now that it's outside the front door, I am starting to get a little bit more stressed out. Yeah. There's something like I need to reach out to some people I know that work in this field, and because there's something that when you watch all these podcasts, Buzz, question for you. No, but like when you watch these podcasts and these interviews, the people that are kind of in the know, you would think would be in the know, they're all kind of referring to this dark side of this contact, the scary part, but none of them are saying what that is. It feels like there's certain things people know about what's coming that no one wants to talk about, and it's freaking me out.
Well, I think it goes with what Stephen Hawking said before he died, right? That if aliens exist and they came to Earth, it would be like Columbus arriving to the Americas.
Well, that's another thing. It's like I would love to assume that they're here to help and to help with fix the environment and energy and help us guide us if they care about us. But what if they just want to live here? What if they're like, this place is pretty cush, you guys ain't gonna do anything about it, we're gonna take it.
Hot mustard Doritos.
There you go. Either we coexist, or what if there's just it's not ridiculous to think there could be like a mass extermination, or that we become a slave colony, or that we're food. I mean, anything is possible. We truly know nothing. I'm trying to stay positive, but these thoughts are, as it's getting closer and people don't want to say whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
What the fuck is it?
Why isn't it? So I'm going back, and if you add up the people over the history of humans, we're talking about, like 1 trillion people. And how did we hit the lottery? If they're gonna happen right when we're in our middle age, like, oh, I finally get to be an adult and I can buy a remote control car powered by gas anytime I want. And they're gonna come back, like fry my brain.
I just got this Bronco. I want to drive it for a while.
We hit the lottery out of the 1 trillion people that are here for us.
But the flip side is like we could live through it, and it could be something. It could be something beautiful. It could be amazing. But the not knowing is the part that is like frustrating. Like, let's hurry up and get there. Or if it's bad, let's just forget about it. Let's go back to how it was.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be catastrophic either. I also want to, believe in the best case scenario. But, also when you look at kind of like the ancient civilizations and cultures, unfortunately, a lot of their demise seems to happen shortly after there's been a huge influx of knowledge brought up by what appears to be entities that are not human.
God damn it, Frank.
So,
I know you're right. I hate that you're right.
Yeah.
So what's your best case scenario?
Best case scenario is that they're going to help us just kind of, elevate our thinking with, I don't want to sound too like new agey, right? But just kind of just being aware that, this reality is not the end. This is not what we should aspire to. There's more to this, beyond this. Probably they'll say time is an illusion. I think that,
Why
like
do
I
that
said-
for us? Why welcome us into this new thing? To be part of...
Because I think we, whether you want to call it by, through elites or whatever, but we have really isolated ourselves. And we, again, our own arrogance and, just humans being what we are, I don't think we live to our full potential. There's all this talk that we only use 10% of our brain. What if they teach us how to use the other 90? What can we achieve then? Apparently, we can only decipher like 10% of our DNA. What if they show us what's in that rest of the 90%? You get what I'm saying? So I want to believe that they're going to come and help us fill in the blanks. Some people are not going to like it. Like I said, they might say Jesus wasn't real, but they might say that he was.
Yeah.
They might say that Jesus was one of their guys.
Right.
And then the church is going to have to deal with that and cope with. So, like I said, my best hope, at least for me, is that they can help us just kind of piece together our history, because I don't think we even know.
A lot of blanks.
There's way too many blanks. Great documentary series on Netflix is the what is it called? The
History of
Apocalypse.
Ancient?
I think it's Ancient Apocalypse, hosted by Graham Hancock. Yeah, great guy. I love his books. He's honestly one of the most humble people I ever met. The documentary really opens your mind to this idea that the Earth is way older than we believe, and that some major catastrophe happened at some point that changed everything and wiped whatever history we had, whatever we knew about ourselves was gone, So like I said, for me, I hope that they can help us fill in those blanks, because at the end of the day, yeah, sure, it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I think in the long run, it's going to benefit us, to know really who we are and where do we fit in this huge cosmic.
What is our
puzzle.
place in the universe?
Yeah. Are we just meant to be workers like we are now? Are we meant, what? Yeah, what is our
I hope
destiny?
we're meant for more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Johnny, your best case scenario?
They just leave us alone.
Really?
I like the dialogue right now. I like the mystery. I don't want to hear an end to a story. I don't want to have to deal with some sort of...
What if it's just the beginning and then there's all new questions?
Yes, but I'm getting old, I don't want to be Buzz Aldrin, cranky old guy. I just want to I want to talk about it with y'all and have a nice experience, like listening to other people talk about it. I like the exposition of not knowing. I like people wondering.
Yep.
I like wonder. I like theories. I like
wonder is hopeful.
I like theoretical analysis. I just think that it's fun not knowing, and I think that is a sport that we're undervaluing. I want to believe. I have the posters right here. That is the fun, is I want to believe. The poster says "I know" is not as cool,
I'm sure of this. Yeah.
I've been made aware because of a government document, and I don't know. I just I think the wonder is a little bit more romantic, and it's fun to speculate and I mean, and I don't want anyone else's hopes to be dashed, but for me personally, I just think that it's a little bit more of for me, it's a sporting thing that's very Coast to Coast has been a wonderful show to listen to since I was in high school, and I think that because it's
magical. It was fucking
it gives
magical.
me butterflies, being like, oh, this is such a cool thing to listen to, and I don't know,
It's the equivalent of the ancients looking up at the stars and being like, what's out there?
Yeah,
totally.
And that's kind of where we're at the moment, but we might be about to find out what's out there.
Yeah. And maybe they just punt it down the road another couple of years, and I hope your 10-year thing is wrong. I hate that.
Well, 2027 seems to be like the official end date as far as either them coming and open contact, or that could be, other people think that might be when this major cataclysm happens to Earth where things are either over or they're really bad for a long time. But let's try to stay positive. I want to encourage the audience. Thank you guys both for coming in. This was
thank you for
having me. I think I needed this desperately.
Follow me on Twitter. I'm Teflon Kardashian. I'm just kidding. I would.
At USSR Dad, at Engineer Frank. Is that what you are on Twitter?
Frank on Twitter, yeah.
And on Instagram,
Frankinator.
Frankinator.
Yeah.
Johnny is not on Instagram, which is
no. I was for a while, but then I stopped because I every time I opened it, made me feel terrible. I would scroll for like 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, everyone out there is so much cooler and better at their stuff than I am. And I was like, you know what? I can get rid of this feeling.
Just wait until people start posting up with their pictures of the aliens. Right? The first one, the meat one. You know what I mean?
That will be the biggest flex.
Thank you to the audience for bearing with me as I go through this this wild journey. It's been fun. I'm a little scared, but I encourage everybody to have an open mind, including myself and you guys. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Hopefully we'll do more of these shows. Maybe this will become its own spin-off podcast at some point.
It's called Fuck Mick West.
Fuck Mick West. That'd be a hilarious name for a podcast.
Hopefully they don't reveal everything, because otherwise we're going to run out of things to talk about. Because once the secret's out, like, we're done. Like, we can rest this topic.
I think it's all just starting. I mean, we'll see.
Just go back to talking about Shohei Ohtani.
Right? That's it.
Like, he's cool.
Yeah, he's
the coolest human.
He might be from another planet. He's so good. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming here and talking about this stuff. I'd like to do it again. It's always good to see both of you. To listeners, thank you guys. Follow the whole thing, do the shit, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
This is Lola, and I'm here to tell the world to stop being such pussies and listen to Rare Form Radio.